Okay, good morning to everybody. Gitvach. Thank you for joining us as we continue and maybe finish Kesser Shem Tov, because I'm not sure if we'll be continuing with the Sefer next year. We have to see after the summer break. I might be doing a Sunday morning shiur in Hasmonean boys at this time, so either we'll move Shacharis back a little bit to 8, and then it'll give me enough time to get there, and then we may continue with Kesser Shem Tov. I have a couple of other ideas, but for today at least, let's tuck into the ideas that we're going to be privileged to learn together. Kesser Shem Tov Kuf Mem Gimel. And the Tzaddik comments on the Mishnah Ahavas, Bir Mishnah. The Mishnah famously tells us, Da mala mala mimcha. A person should know what is above them. Ayin roya v'ozen shamas. There's an eye that sees, there's an ear that hears. And today with modern technology, with video cameras and everything, it gives you a better ability to understand the way in which literally everything can be recorded. It's quite likely that my phone is recording me right now. Even though there's no official app that is supposed to be doing that, it is very likely that some part of my phone is listening to all of my conversations and everything else.
Just change HaShem for the Chinese government.
Yeah, something like that, Havdil B'Lasad Lavai. It's very possible like that will just be Judgment Day. It'll just be, everything will just be revealed, and that's it. But there is an Ayin Roya Ozen Shamas. I think that Rabbi Judah Michel has in his book, Baderach, he writes, usually that Maimer Chazal is in it like a negative sense, like there's an eye that's watching you, there's an ear that's hearing. He says, I like to read the Mishnah, no, don't think any good thing you do goes unnoticed. There's an eye that's watching, there's an ear that's here. Every little good deed, every little tiny thing, nobody else will know about it, but a little mysterious nefesh that you made in your own personal life, not to say something, not to do something that, it gets written, so isn't it interesting how we're naturally oriented in a negative sense? Like everybody reads this Mishnah, people shot, it's like a bad thing, why? Why can't it be beautiful? There's an ayin roya v'ozen shamas. Ki yesh re'iyah v'shmi v'yediyah. Says the Baal Shem HaKadosh, there are 3 different layers of perception. There's re'iyah, there's seeing something. Then there's shmiyah, there is hearing something. And then yediyah is the intimate knowledge of the thing, the understanding of the thing. So he says there are 3 ascending levels. Re'iyah gadol mishmiyah, u'shmiyah miyediyah. Okay, re'iyah is greater, seeing is greater than hearing, and hearing is greater than just knowing, right? Because if a person knows something from afar, but it's not comparable to actually being there, right? But when a person hears something, so then it's me'acharei hapargud. It exists, but it's not direct, right? Until a person is able to see something. Seeing is the highest madrega, being able to perceive something. This is obviously das, bina, and chachma. Right, the same, right? Chachma, bina, v'das. Das is the yediyah; it's a lower level. Shmiyah is always bina, right? Hearing is associated with bina, but the ultimate is chachma, is riyah. Ezu chacham haraya as hanoilad, right? The aspect of being a chacham is to be raya. That's the 3rd and highest madrega.
So when we, for example, say things like V'datas Hashem, or for example, in different ways, that Vayida Adam es Chava Ishtoi, are we saying then that basically it's the lowest way of connecting with something which is beyond your reach?
Everything is relative, right? So relative,
because you say Yidiyah is the lowest.
Relative, but yes, but in another aspect, Yidiyah is the most perfect because it's the conjugation of seeing and hearing and knowing. Right, but if you abstract Yediyah alone, right, again, taking it out of like a das perspective, Vayeda Adam Chavas, Vayeda Adam es Ishtai, right? Obviously, there was that aspect of hearing and seeing there as well, right? So it's all incorporated. But if you can imagine abstracting just knowing a piece of information, but in a daima, they say in a daima shmiyah l're'iyah, right? Certainly in a daima Yediyah l'shmiyah. Right? But ultimately, in the spheres, das is already a blending together of the seeing and the hearing to make something even more perfect. But if you could abstract all 3 from each other, then you have it in corresponding ascending order. Yeah?
Legabei Munah is it the case that knowing having Munah Shlema is more than having seen it or heard it?
This is a big sugya. There is a level like that. Rav Kook addresses this. There is a level where simple emunah pshuta, right, even without having any moichin, can reach even higher. Rabbi Nachman says that explicitly in Sichas Haran, that simple faith could bring a person to a level of intellect that's even beyond anything they could get there with their mind. But the highest madriga is where it's both, right? Because remember, as a person ascends in their knowledge, we learned this in Likutei Moharan, Torah Chaf Aleph, Chaf Beis, right? When you go from what we call pnim to a greater makif, right, and a person goes up a level, it isn't as if now you know. It's just now there is a greater level of potential perception because now you entered into a higher frequency, then you have access to even higher frequencies. You go up a level, there's always going to be room for emunah, right? It's just that the Indian of what that emunah is deeper, is more nuanced, is more delicate, is more gentle, is more right, refined. So there's always a madrig of emunah pshuta. The ultimate is to have both. Is to have whatever level of yediyah that we should have. Remember the pasuk says, "V'yadata yoyim Hashem." You should know Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and that's not a steer to emunah, right? To have both is the ultimate. That's what Rav Kook writes. To have both. Okay, but these are the three levels: shmiya, yediyah, and shmiya, and then re'iyah. V'hine yavar echad v'yichbar. L'imar she'ein Yerushalayim ba'olam. Imagine if a person who comes along and says, no, Jerusalem doesn't exist. There is no such place called Yerushalayim. Why? He never saw it. He never heard it. So it's a right time, most of Jewish history, they had no pictures, they had no anything. All they knew from Yerushalayim is that somewhere in a book it says there's such a place. Many, many times in many, many Sfarim, right? Everywhere you look, Yerushalayim. Maybe it doesn't exist. He never saw it. He never heard it. So he says, what a silly thing. But there are thousands of people who did see it and did hear it, and they'll come back and give evidence. So even though he didn't, they did. They saw it. So this is a madrega. This is very deep. Of Moshe says to Pari, Koi amar Hashem shalach es ami. Send out my nation. Hashem said, send out my nation. And they will celebrate with me in the desert. Pari says, what are you talking about? Who's Hashem? Which Hashem? Pirish, what he really meant is Larry Yisif. I never saw this God. I never saw Hashem. I never heard Hashem. You're talking about something that I don't know exists. If you'll say, okay, he is seen but not seen, because you cannot really see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Asher Eshma B'Koilei. So then he continues, not only me Hashem, that okay, fine, you'll tell me, not only have I not seen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's impossible to see him, but Asher Eshma B'Koilei, I haven't even heard him. Pirish Hayeli L'Shmer Kol Dibur Nevuah Mimanu. I at least need to hear some kind of nevuah from him. Kamayatam, like you, Moshe and Aaron. The Imkain. So Pari says, Kivin she'ein li re'io shmiya, since I never saw it, and since I never heard it, mimenu, so I don't have anything. Va'atem roitzim she'il li emunah. Boy, and you want that I should have emunah? Mitzad yediyah? That I should be able to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the level of knowledge, like I should know Hashem? Lo yadati es Hashem. Not on any level. I didn't see him, I've never heard from him, and I don't know him. And therefore I will not send out Klal Yisrael, because Hashem doesn't exist. So Moshe and Aaron answer him, Elohei ha'evriim nikra aleinu. Hashem has called to us. Pirish afal pisha ata legashmuscha. You with your physicality and the limitations of your this worldly perception, ein lecha re'io shmiya mimenu. You haven't seen, you haven't heard, but mikol makom anachnu shmanu. But we did. We have heard, we have seen. V'teida lecha. And know, you should know for yourself. We're going to go 3 days in the desert. So what's Pshat that Moshe Rabbeinu responds to this, that Pari in the mind of the Baal Shem Tov is saying, I didn't hear Hashem, I didn't see Hashem, I don't know from Hashem. Why does he say Shloisha Yam B'Midbar? We're going to go 3 days in the desert. Umaisha Amar Hidafka says Derech Gimel Yamim. We're going to walk 3 days. She Evshel Chalahashiv Pai Lahasig Pai Ham. I'm sorry, Lahasig Pe'ah Medaber, because 3 days is beyond.
My dot say Pai Hamidbar.
Huh?
My dot say Pai Hamidbar.
Pai Hamidbar. Okay. That's what I assumed, but okay. Lahasig Pai Hamidbar. You can't grasp the desert. V'har Elikim, and the mountain of God. Lo al pi re'iyah. Afilu al yidei klei machzeh. K'moish, right? Shesam lavan derech gimel yama bein atzayin. Right, like the Mefarshim say, Chazal says that the Mefarshim that Lavan put 3 days between him and Yaakov Avinu, which is the amount of time that it's impossible to see. Right, even with a klei machzeh, with binoculars, it is such a distance. 3 days is beyond shmiya, beyond re'iyah, beyond anything. You're not going to be able to hear. Meaning Moshe is telling Paro, you're saying he doesn't exist because I haven't heard it and I haven't seen it. Have you ever heard the Sinai desert? Have you ever seen, the mountains out there? But you wouldn't be a fool to say it doesn't exist. It's just you weren't there. But there are people who have been there, and they'll come and tell you that it exists. See, he says this is what it means that we're going to serve Hashem. Shleishis Yamim Bamidbar isn't just a physical location. What he means to tell Pare is that our experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in such a way that we will go into a realm of spirituality that not it doesn't exist because you haven't seen it, heard it, experienced it. It does exist, but it's just a place where you can't go or haven't gone. But to us, it will be very real because we'll experience it. Just like we'll experience the desert that you've not experienced, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just that you, on your own personal level, have been withheld from being able to experience it. It'll be 3 days into the desert, and you can't deny. You won't be able to deny and to say she'ein midbar Sinai, that the Sinai desert doesn't exist. And there's no such thing as Har Sinai in the world. There are people who have seen it, vishamu, and have heard of it. And therefore, this is incredibly deep. You should believe it. And you need to believe it even though you haven't seen it, even though you haven't heard it, all the while that there are other people who are reporting this reality. So then you need to believe it. You need to know that it exists. Even though you didn't experience it, they experienced it. So this is Pshat in the Mishnah. You should know what is above you. Ayin roya. An eye that sees. What does this mean? Ki mitzad shu ayin roya sheyistakel v'yirah misayfa levad sayfai. You have an eye. And the physical eyes is just a physical expression of a spiritual capacity to see, which means to grasp. Right? In our physical bodies, it becomes the ability to know the things around us. That's what we call sight. Right? But the Adar Bamarim, the Ramchal makes it very clear. Re'iyah is a spiritual chush. Right? Meaning that in our lowly gashmistic levels, sight reveals itself through the 2 eyes. To tzaddikim, they had spiritual sight. They were able to grasp many, many, many things, even though they didn't use their physical eyes to see them. The Chayzim Lublin, actually, they say, was blind in his eyes, physical eyes. But he was able to see Misayfa Adamat Saifa. He knew everything that was happening all around him because his spiritual sense of Re'iyah was activated and not limited by his Gashmias. So, says the Mishnah, Ayin Raya. You have an eye, so you should perceive, and I should be able to perceive godliness. Ba'oizen, and you have an ear, Ra'i Shatia Shemas. The ear should hear Hakruzin Shal Bezdin Shamala, all of the announcements of the Bezdin Shamala and the Baskal that we learned about in the previous year, Hayotis Me Har Chayrev, that emerges from Har Chayrev, Shuvu Banim Shevavim, right? Or Oile Brias Me Al Banim Shal Taira. We should hear that. And you would know with your eyesight and with your ears that God exists. We should be able naturally to perceive it. Maybe as children we do. As babies we do. Right? Like it says about the fetus growing in the mother's womb. they are in that aspect where they could see everything. Then we forget it all. And the whole Yiddishkeit is just for the purpose of trying to remember, right, that which we lost. But we know it. But however, even though ayin roya and oizen l'chayra shemas, but v'chol ma'asecha harayim b'sefer ba'oisam ha'sfiras v'abir shel chusha nishmascha nechtavet. But you know what's preventing us from seeing, what's preventing us from hearing, is that we're so dabuk to gashmias that we haven't made the requisite break that will enable us to pull away from the lower elements that keep us trapped in physical re'iyah, physical shmiya, so that we should rise above to be able to perceive ruchnias with our sense of sight, with our sense of hearing, in a ruchnias sense. So what can you do? B'chol ma'asecha b'sefer, he says sefer is the spheres, right, which is our own personal embodiment, so to speak, of the tzelem Elokim. Like we learned in Torah Dalid, that Avanisechem, our chakuk, right, al atzmois shel adam, right, that a person's sins are etched into their physical body, and it anchors us down below in the afar, as opposed to rising into the vayipach ba'ap of nishmas chaim, and to be able to move up in our consciousness into our ruchnias, which would then activate our sense of hearing, our sense of seeing, to be able to hear spirituality, to be able to perceive with our eyes the deeper layer, like we said in great length yesterday in the Shalosh Shudas shiur, right? To be able to live in the Olam Asiyah, but to be able to grasp the Ruchnias beyond it.
Can it be said that like our Meisim and our concept we're superimposing with the Gavas, the Vaniyas, rather than, let's say, because he translates here as like Basefer as also like a Kasafir, like this light is coming towards you, but you're like taking your ideas, your belief, your Meisim, and you're kind of like just putting it on it. And maybe in the beginning, you can see some of the light, but as it keeps on going, it becomes more and more opaque. Is that the word? Opaque.
Yeah.
And before that, yeah. But yeah, so I wonder if that, like, and also going back that you spoke about your actual essence is being covered and covered and covered and covered, because when you etch something, you are now creating something new in front that doesn't exist.
Exactly. All right, and ultimately it results from taiva. It results from a person being oriented in their impulses toward lowliness, as opposed to getting over that and orienting themselves toward ruchnias, right? And this is the whole journey of trying to become an elevated person. Kadosh Shem Tov, ki kadosh ani. HaShem says, I want you to hang out with me. I'm kadosh. You need to be kadosh, right? Meaning, in order to access ani, Kadosh Shem Tov, ki kadosh ani. HaShem says that only one way that you can access me, right, is through kedusha, because HaShem is kadosh. Kadosh is removed, right? Kadosh is elevated, beyond, transcendent. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kadosh Shem Tov. But because v'chol ma'asecha harayim b'sefer nachtavim, they are etched in ba'oisan hasfiras v'abehiras shel chushay nishmascha, that what should be a spiritual sense of being able to perceive, even, and here's the chiddush, even with our physical eyes, right? Meaning the spiritual sense of sight works through our physical eyes. That it's not a stira. I don't mean that a person closes their eyes and then some other, third eye opens up and you can see a different realm. No, it's here. But what do we see when we look at a person, right? What do we see when we experience situations in the world? What's the message? Are we living, like we said yesterday, in the mashal or the nimshal, right? What are we tapping into? The same thing with hearing, right? What do we hear when someone says something to us? Or just hear on the basic level, or are we able to penetrate layer after layer to be able to really hear, like what are they really saying? What do they really want? What do they really need? Like Rabbi Shlomo used to say, like people, walk over to you and they ask you what time it is. He says, like, it's not, if you listen carefully, you hear them saying, like, what am I supposed to do now with my life? Right? They have a clock. They can find a clock. What are they asking? To listen really, what is this person really saying? What do they need? But we cover it up because we just focus on the Gashmias. V'chol ma'asecha harayim b'sefer nachtavim. They are like scribbling over on the sefer, on the spheres. And they mada ata umakha oira shalom neshama. Right. So therefore, you, me, us, we, with our actions, we are madhe or makhe, we are limiting and weakening, lessening the light of the neshama. Because like the pasuk says, our averis are separating between us and HaShem. Because HaShem is ruchni, and averis is ego/gashmi. And so it's going to separate. Al-kain, therefore, da lamala mimcha, or da mala mimcha. Therefore, unfortunately for most of us, we're locked out of hearing and seeing. So all we're left is yidiyah. Is da mala mimcha. All you can know is that there were other people who saw and heard, tzadikei elyon, and we have to listen to them, and we have to trust them. Right? So it's a radical statement and a reformulation of what it means proof to God's existence. Right? That means to say, even if a person is completely non-convinced, why don't we trust someone else? There are millions of things that we don't see or we don't hear, but we trust other people's opinion. So here are tzadikei elyon who come to us and say, I hear the Baskal. I hear it. I see it. Why isn't that enough to rely on? That's called emunas chachamim. Not only to believe in the chachamim, but emunas chachamim, in a certain sense, means that my emunah is based on chachamim. Because I wasn't there, but I trust that they're telling me the truth. These are anshe emes. I believe that these are people who are reporting accurately about their experience. And if they're saying that they've seen utumunas Hashem yabit, to see Hashem, so then I'm able to trust them. 3 million men, women, and children reported that they were at Har Sinai, right? So this is something akin to Rabbi Nachman says in Sichos Ran. I gave a shiur on this once. In the Sichos Ran series, Rabbi Nachman talks about a crazy person. A person who's completely insane and has the natural impulse to act in ways that are totally unacceptable, and antisocial in every way. Says the Rebbe, if only that person would make a commitment to follow the instructions of a normal person, and that he will only do what the normal person is saying, there will not be any chiluk between him and the normal person. Because we're all crazy inside. We just have that filter that enables us to act in ways. I mean, we don't follow every impulse. If we followed every impulse, we'd all be probably in jail, for one thing or another. We limit ourselves, right? Because we're normal, because we have that part of our brain that's able to. So he says, if this person would just follow a normal person, they would be okay. Says Rabbi Nachman, you don't need to be a tzaddik. You just need to follow the advice of the tzaddik. You follow the advice of the tzaddik, you do what the tzaddik says, you follow the prescriptions, you'll be a tzaddik. You will be pile in this world, things on the level that tzaddikim do, and then eventually, like that story with the turkey prince, right? Eventually you realize, oh my gosh, I wasn't a turkey in the first place. I really am a tzaddik. Because the tzaddik is only bringing out of me that inner tzaddik, va'amich kulam tzaddikim, like we learned in Torah Chav Gimel. Every yid is called a tzaddik al shem abris, right? Which we're going to learn again later on in the lesson. Because we actually, just the fact that we have a bris is already a tzaddik. There's already tzidkas baked into us. B'nei Avram Yitzchak, we're in the covenant of brisa, la'achnisa bebrisa shel Avram Avinu. We have Avram Avinu's energy baked into our atzmias, and the tzaddik is just helping us to reveal that, it. So therefore, we might not be able to access godliness on the level of Riyah. We might not be able to access godliness on the level of Shmiyah. Because even though I and Raya and Oiz and Shaz, we have those capacities, but they're not working properly. Why? Because we've scribbled over those senses, so to speak, with our big, Gashmi's permanent markers, and all there is now is physical seeing and physical hearing. Still, like Moshe Rabbeinu told Pare, trust us. You don't need to know that God exists. We know that God exists. We've saw Him. We've heard Him. Trust us. The tzaddikim are telling us the same thing. Follow the tzaddik, and we'll be okay. Okay, let's take a look at the next teaching. Shemati mimayri. I heard in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, Ki Ashchina Nikra Tefillah. The Shechina is called prayer. Like it's written in the Kisvei Arizal, based on the pasuk Va'ani Tefillah. Ani is always a reference to the Shechina. Ani, in this context, is actually David HaMelech, right? And David is Malchus. Malchus is the indwelling presence of God. Malchus is the Shekhinah. So David HaMelech, in saying Va'ani Tefillah, is saying that the Shekhinah is prayer. Prayer is the revelation of the Shekhinah. Tefillah is associated with Shekhinah. Malchus is associated with Peh, with Dibor. Right? Adni Aleph Daled Nun Yud is the name of Malchus, the name of the Shekhinah. Sefasai Tiftach.
What you're saying in the Mashur of Nachman, is that like Pshat Halavai Otziazdu as Tzotzi Shemak?
Something like that, yeah. Exactly.
How's that different to someone who just mechanically does mitzvahs?
Because the hope is that I'm Ma'arsha Machzir Balamutav, meaning it cannot be mechanical. The Maranayim says, no, Alavai Oisi Azra Sarasi Shamaru, Shama Arsha Machzir Balamutav means you have to be connected to the Ma'arsha. Even if a person's not on the level of absolute dveikus with Hashem, keep the Torah in a way of panemius, you'll come back to Hashem. Yeah. Okay, so here we're saying that the Shekhinah is tefillah, va'ani tefillah, the gam of Sham, and it's revealed over there in the Kisvei Arizal. Kishi yispalel yasem agamas panav l'shechina liyachta. Especially now in the 9 days, when we're davening, our main focus when we daven for Geula should be on higher things, right? Not just for our own yishuv adas, for our own healing, for our own physical plenty, for our own, everything should be mesudar. But our main focus is on the Shekhinah. Liyachta, that the Shekhinah, which is this world, right, and its embodiment of godly energy, is so distant from revelation, right? Revelation, the revealed godliness, is called Kudsha B'richu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shchinte is the godliness that's latent in reality, and it's estranged. It's the saddest thing in the world. It's the Shekhinah is in captivity, and the husband is standing at the gates of Gaza, and looking in longingly, and his wife is in captivity. Like there's a tremendous, awesome Rachmanas, but we have to bring the two back together. How can they live apart? So this is how it is with the Shekhinah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, in our davening, a person should not be mechaven for their own te'elah. Chas v'shalom alav nemar, because chas v'shalom, and the timing is pretty precise. Mamish, right after Chodesh Av, we're going to learn a pasuk from Eicha. I think it's the first pasuk in Eicha that he quoted in all of the different pieces. And here we have the pasuk says, "Nesanani HaShem b'yidei la'echalkum." Hashem has placed me in the hands of the one from whom I am no longer able to rise. So the explanation is Nisanani, I believe it's Atni, Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Biyadai. Right, meaning I've taken Hashem and the Shekhinah, instead of davening for the Shekhinah, I'm davening for myself. And therefore, la yachalkum. Therefore, I'm not rising, I'm not lifting up the Shekhinah, elevating the Shekhinah, because I'm focused on me instead of focusing on that which ought to be focused on. Hatam yoiser ki in a deeper way, if a person focuses only on their own ta'elas, if a person is only davening for physical matters, then automatically there's a mesach mavdil. There is a barrier that's created. Once a person, it's almost like taking tefillah, and instead of sending it like the bird up and out, we send it into like a crevice in the wall, and it traps it, and the Shekhinah gets trapped in there. And instead, what tefillah should be is davening in such a deep way where we keep the tefillah like unchained, unconstricted, free. How do we keep tefillah free? By saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm not focusing on Gashmis at all. Like we learned in Torah Chaf Aleph, I believe, when a person is Mesuder Beruchnias, We don't need to daven for Gashmias. We don't need to. It's like the Gemara in Tainis. If you're davening two tefillas, but one tefillah is tali on the other, you don't need to daven both. Just daven for the tefillah that all the other tefillahs are tali on. It means if a person just davens for das, that I should live in a state of consciousness, of ruchnias, of real awakening, Memela, everything else is mitukan, because in das kanisa mechasarta, if you have das, you don't need anything else. Nachamu ami, like we learned, right? The nechama lies in rising makif to pnim, nachamu, right? Higher and higher and higher and higher in our consciousness. So then you don't need to daven for anything else. Alternatively, whatever a person is davening for begashmias, we can daven in the ruchniistika aspect of it. So parnasa, can daven for parnasa. But what do I want with parnasa? I want to be able to give tzedakah. That's the ultimate tikkun for Taivas Mammon. Right, we're learning in the morning. We're learning right about Taivas Mammon in the mornings. Torah Chav Gimel. Right, the whole tikkun for Taivas Mammon is tzedakah, because it's literally the opposite. Instead of taking money in, it's literally letting money out. It's how could a person be in Taivas Mammon if they're getting rid of their money in a holy way? They allow the money to be a means toward the greater end of tzedakah. So daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to be able to give tzedakah. Memela nichlal in that is that parnasa should be mitukan, but instead of trapping the tefillah and gashmis, where already there's a mesach hamavdil, we're keeping it free. So we're davening for everything on the level of neshama. If we're davening for everything on the level of neshama, so then there's no limitation. Then there's no die. I didn't limit it in any way. Once you're davening in a way of the Shechina, then it's completely endless. Let's just learn one more small teaching. Shamati Mimari, the third teaching, Ki Yiras ha'aynesh, Shu Yirah Chitzonis, when a person is afraid of getting punished. This is called Yirah Chitzonis. It's external Yirah. This is not really the ideal Yiras HaShem. How do we elevate a lower fear? How do we sublimate Yirah Chitzonis to enable my experience of a fear to get to a higher madrega of what Yirah is supposed to be? See, he says, when a person realizes that Yirah Chitzonis, Moira al Yadi Yisbarach Pshuta L'Kabel Shamim, that punishment is not for the sake of punishing. Consequence is for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu helping me to live in the way that will enable me to walk with Him arm in arm through life. Kiviyachal. Kadoshim tiyu ki kadoshani. I want to be with HaShem. So that's what Oynish. HaShem is not trying to punish. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to remind us there's a gather in life. There's consequence. Natural consequence, not like punishment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in such a way, you stick your hand in fire, you get burnt. Period. That's just the way it is. It's not emotional. It's not on the level of feelings and being, like having hurt feelings. That's just the way it is. That's nothing personal. It's not personal. HaShem created the world in this way. But if a person is the whole time only staying within the fear of consequence without reflecting on why there is a system of consequence, meaning where did Yirah come from? Where did punishment come from? They realize then, ki gavar aleinu chazdai. They realize that this aspect of gevura that I experience is actually mushrish and chazdai yisbarach, in Hashem's love. That Hashem is trying to give us the opportunity to stay connected to Him. And therefore, Hashem says, sur me'ra, careful. That's fire. You touch fire, you're going to get burned. Right? But not because Hashem is looking to punish and making life so difficult that if you do this, you get punished. It's not the point. Hashem cares so deeply about us living in the metzias of the Dalet Amas of His presence. So that's why Hashem is, His hand is Moira al Yada Yizbar Pshuta L'Kabel Shavim. Hashem is trying to awaken us to tshuva. Hashem is trying in Yirah Chitzonis to help a person reflect and say, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going to happen after I leave this world. I don't know what goes on. We make jokes about it one way or another, but it's a real thing. We're going to die one day. And a person has Yirah Chitzonis. But don't stay in Yirah Chitzonis. Why is there even an aspect of Yirah Chitzonis? In order to elevate it into a higher Yirah, to realize, Kadosh Baruch Hu loves me so much. Not trying to hurt me. Kadosh Baruch Hu is trying to bring me home. V'yis oira mizel Yirah pnimis hanikra Ahava. It's an unbelievable line. Then a person will awaken to Yirah Pnimis, which, by the way, is not even called Yirah. It's called Ahava. That's Yirah Pnimis. You know what? Yirah Shomayim is really supposed to be Ahava. Because on a higher level of Yirah, it's just Re'iyah. It's just the awareness, to live in the awareness of Hashem's presence. That's what Yirah means. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Right? Yirah is Re'iyah. That's exactly right. The Dagamach and Ephraim says. Re'iyah. That's called Ava, the Kabul Ba'ava. Right? To receive and accept everything from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, realizing Be'ava, realizing it comes from Hashem's love. And then you'll get completely out of the level of Yirah Chitzonis, out of just on time, out of the level of Yirah Chitzonis of the lower level, right? And this is the ultimate chen of the words of the Baal Shem Tov is full of chen, right? Because most people are going to be trapped in Yirah Chitzonis. They're not going to even be aware because we haven't taught and learned about Hashem's love to be able to recognize no. Gotta move to a higher level. Yirah Ilah, Yirah Pnimis, Hanikra Ava. That's the realization that all there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love. And that every single expression, no matter how Gvura-oriented it looks, consequences, punishment, it's literally just out of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's great Ava in order to draw us close by showing us where the boundaries are. And Hashem says, I will not let you get too far away from me. I will pull you back one way or another. Right, but it's not a punishment. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's like with the umbrella, like hooking us in the back of the shirt and pulling us close because all He wants is to hold us. Okay, that's how we elevate Yirah Tachtaina to Yirah Elyaina. Okay, Ashreinu, what a privilege. We've been zocheh to learn many teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, and we'll continue. Everything we learn is the Baal Shem Tov, but we'll see with which sefer and how we do it when we meet again.
Yirah Chitzonis, that's the lower level. The Yirah Pnimis is also known as
Ahava. Yeah, Yirah Pnimis is also known as Ahava. Yeah.
Which is a higher level. We're saying it's a higher level.
Of course.
The Balatanya says you have such a strong connection. Mevakshei HaShem Yismach lei Mevakshei HaShem Yidridayo Yidridayo Yidridayo